Marikwa, saludos, and in my language, loa sinchimiavo. Today, we are gathered on Taino, Island Arawak, and Boricua lands to celebrate the diversity we bring from our communities and the science we do within those communities. It's an honor to be here. For not that long ago, I was out in the audience, coming to my first SACNAs. There I am, little baby Lydia. It was the first time I saw such a gathering of so many beautiful Black, brown, and Indigenous nerds. I remember that day being filled with pride and joy that I had finally found my community. I dreamed that maybe someday I could actually be up on this stage to be able to welcome future scholars. And today, through a meandering river of experiences, here we are. When I think about my career pathway, I reflect on how Mother Earth, or Bawiwa in my language, is the best teacher. Personally, I learned from the land through running diverse ecosystems. And as a scholar, I'm an environmental soil scientist who studies soil health in degraded landscapes, such as those impacted by mining. Now, when you think about soil, you might think of dirt. But soil is literally and figuratively so much deeper than that. I like to say that soil is the life-giving skin of the planet. And today, I want to share some lessons soils have taught me about how to be a good steward in the present and a strong ancestor in the future. Soils have taught me the importance of relationship building, both with the land and with each other. The deeper the relationship, the more reciprocal and interdependent it is. Far too often, we are taught to extract in ways that don't serve our long-term growth or our support networks. Those of us who are committed to realizing a just society and environment must remember that this starts with recognizing our interdependencies between people, place, and planet. Soils have also taught me that protecting the land means protecting the people. Indigenous peoples have co-evolved with our ecosystems since time immemorial. This is culturally embedded into our practices. Protecting soils also means protecting the people who advocate and heal the land. For political decisions about land use are inseparable from our socio-ecological survival. Important, what I think, is soils have taught me to embrace periods of rest, to replace hyperproductivity, which is really an artifact of colonial capitalist culture, with regenerative practices that recognize that rest is a form of resistance. I think it's important to know that this is knowledge that's been well documented by rural farmers here in the island of Puerto Rico, as well as many other indigenous peoples. Lastly, soils have taught me the importance of cycles of renewal. Building soil health means transforming death into life through processes like decomposition, fermentation, and digestion, so that nutrients are more bioavailable for other future life. This applies to our communities as well, as we are all actively reconnecting and recreating how we live in relationship with all life, both human and non-human kin. With our climate's increasing changes, these cycles of renewal are a critical process to re-envision our futures. So now, just as soil health shapes our ecosystems, our identities and our culturally constructed paradigms shape our social systems. This is reflected in how we carry ourselves in the world. I recognize how my identity as a Yoema woman shapes my responsibilities to soils that I live and depend on. I think deeply about how we heal the toxic ecosystems humanity has caused so that our future ancestors don't have to. So today we are gathered here in community after 3 very hard years of loss, of challenges, but most importantly, of survivance, to celebrate how our identity is a strength in our scholarship. Again, I want to lean on the lessons learned from our ecosystems. In this point in time, I want to point to lessons learned from our river relatives. During field work, I began to observe the differences between channelized rivers and meandering rivers, and what those meant to the ecosystem surrounding them, and most importantly, how they taught me to embrace the many twists and turns in life. You see, channelized rivers, those are straight and surrounded by concrete. When water flows to them, they flow fast, too fast for life to grow on their banks. The meandering rivers, on the other hand, their curves slow down water flow, allowing sediment to build up. which creates an environment where plants begin to grow, cooling the water temperatures, which attract animals and fish to feed on these plants. These bends begin to create environments where life can flourish in this slowness. Essentially, it is these meanders that create healthy ecosystems. Now, how does this apply to our life? In my experience, our life, our academic pathways, are also enhanced when we have these meanders. Far too often, we get caught up in what we should be doing. We race to the next destination like these human-created channelized rivers. We question why we've taken those turns, and a lot of times they feel like failures. But I've actually found that those meanders, intentional or not, are some of the best decisions of my life, some of the places I grew and learned the most from. These meanders have included, during my freshman year of college, I lost a running scholarship from an injury. I was so heartbroken. And I had, so much of my identity was tied into being a runner. I had to transition to a more affordable community college, and it was there that I switched from political science to science courses, and I fell in love with science research. I started doing summer research experiences that actually brought me to my first SOCNAs in that first picture, and the opportunity to meet many future mentors, many of who I continue to talk to today. When I did get into undergrad, I knew I wanted to go to graduate school right away. And so I worked really hard and diligently to do so, doing RAUs every single summer. However, when it came to my senior year, I struggled with the GRE. I actually vomited in it. It's awful. AKA also abolished the GRE. So the first time I applied, I didn't get in. And it was so hard, and I felt like a failure seeing my friends begin their graduate journeys and taking off to new exciting places. In the interim, I worked as a waitress on the evenings, and I also found a job working as an environmental toxicologist for several years. And this process and this time really gave me an ability to reflect and reassess what were my research goals, and how could they better align with the needs of my community. This gave me purpose and passion in my fellowship applications, resulting in several successful fellowships, such as the NSF GRFP. Yeah. Once I was in graduate school, like many, I hit hard stretches where my experiments failed, I questioned if I belonged, and if the work that I was doing mattered. To cope, I went back to running. I started running longer and harder than I ever had before, and I found this deep love of ultra running, which expanded my research, my relationships with the land. It provided a really important and healthy mental and physical outlet, and it actually became a really important tool in my science communication. Today, this has resulted in film projects, publications, podcasts, and working with the outdoor industry. Then lastly, as I finished my PhD, after 6 hard years, my graduation was canceled due to the pandemic. And I want to give a big shout out to the class of 2020 because that was a struggle. I was so disappointed that after all this work, I wouldn't be able to celebrate the occasion with my friends and family who had supported me. But I had to pivot. And so I mapped out a 50-mile honor run to highlight Indigenous scientists, some of them who are in the audience here today. And I raised almost $10,000 of scholarship money for Indigenous STEM students, which was documented into a film. Yeah. This was documented in a film called Run to Be Visible, and you can watch it on YouTube. So in the end, I think it's important to come back to this river. We are all like water, and if we really want something, gravity will pull us exactly where we are meant to be. Sometimes those paths are straight, like the channelized rivers. Sometimes they are braided pathways with obstacles that pull us in multiple directions, and sometimes they meander. But know you will eventually meet your ocean. There are many ways we can learn from these meanders, and they might not always be positive or intentional, but they are always rich in lessons that build up in you like the sediment along the riverbank, making you more resilient to future storms. I hope by sharing some of my meanders, you can reflect, find the joy and meaning in the meanders your life brings you, and know that sometimes those perceived failures bring you closer to your purpose. Please celebrate the beauty and community within those experiences, and know you belong, you are capable, and you are loved. Check it, Tessia.